So it looks like we have everybody on the call. I'm just waiting for confirmation from Jean that we're live, and then we'll call the meeting back to order. Okay, so I just got the word from Jean or from the clerk, excuse me, that we are live. So I'm calling the meeting back to order. The meeting was first called to order at 1:35, and we had consideration of 2 closed session items.
Has joined the meeting.
Julie, can someone give me a wave? Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we had consideration of 2 items in closed session. The first was an update on a land transfer. So this was in closed session because it's a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And on that item, we provided direction to staff. The second item in closed session was regarding overtime policy. This was an in-camera issue as it is a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And on this item, we also provided direction to staff in camera. So our next item is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. If this pertains to you, you can make that statement at this time or when the item arrives on our agenda. I have the approval of the agenda next. I'm looking for a mover and seconder to approve the agenda. Councillor Holmes moves. A seconder?
Councillor Maiden.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden. Then all in favor of the approval of the agenda, starting with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard? We have Councillor Gerard?
Won't let me unmute.
Oh, there you are. We can hear you.
Oh, there. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Agreed. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
A participant has joined the meeting.
Deputy Mayor Manelli, do we have you on the call?
You have me.
Perfect. And I'm looking for your approval of the agenda, your vote yes or no?
Yes.
All right, so the agenda is approved. Next, we have approval of minutes. There's several sets of minutes here. So it's for our meetings dated April 16th, May 5th, May 7th, May 12th, and May 13th. Looking for a mover and seconder to the minutes. Councillor Holmes. Thank you, Councillor Holmes and Councillor Ferguson. I'll wait a moment if there is any discussion out of the minutes. Anyone has any comments? Okay, hearing not, I'll go to the vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, starting with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli? Deputy Mayor Manelli? We may have lost Deputy Mayor. Okay, we'll try to get the Deputy Mayor back on the line. That is a majority, so approval of the minutes has passed, which brings us to the first report. This is from Mr. Dan Cousineau, our Facilities and Health and Safety Coordinator. The report is the volunteer policy report found on pages 19 to 38. And I will pass this over to yourself, Mr. Cousineau, for some comments on the report and any updates that have occurred.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Following the last council meeting, we were asked to get some feedback from some of our volunteer groups in the community. So in collaboration with Calvin Murphy and Tiffany McLaren, we decided to send out a couple questions to a few groups, that being the Tree Committee, the Horticultural Societies, the Beautification Working Group, Clayton Cares, the Appleton Beautification Volunteers, and the Neighborhood Tomato Garden Group.
A participant has left the meeting.
So the two questions that we asked them was, and this will impede a little bit on Calvin's portion, but we asked them how the volunteer policy and the Adopt a Park policy would impact their ability to perform their volunteer work. And with clarifications on the medical waiver, if there were still any concerns about that form being included. And as you have seen in the report and the appendices that outlined 5 responses that we received back from these volunteer groups, there were really 3 recurring themes and 3 questions that we needed to address, and I believe we have the clarification for. First and foremost, there was some confusion as to whom the volunteer policy applies to. And we've had to explain that the volunteer policy is for anybody who volunteers with the Municipality of Mississippi Mills. So anybody who's applied to one of our volunteer placements developed by any one of our staff. So external groups like the horticultural societies who have their own volunteer policies, insurance, and so on, they may do work on some of our public properties, but they're covered under their own volunteer policy. The next issue that again was probably the hottest topic was the medical waiver, and we have made modifications to the medical information form to clearly identify that it's a voluntary form and it's intended for healthcare professionals in the case of an event. It's so that it's so that anybody could tend to your health in the quickest way possible and to have an emergency contact on file. And last but not least, there were concerns about the length of the process and the policy. So again, the municipality is treating this policy the same way we would take on hiring new staff. So it is thorough, and the end goal is truly to protect the volunteers and to protect the municipality. So any individuals volunteering for us are covered under our insurance policy. So it should also be noted that the length of the policy itself is largely due to it explaining a lot of municipal staff responsibilities. It's not exclusively for the volunteers that we will be recruiting. So with those clarifications and a little bit of wordsmithing that we've done and that you've seen in this report, we do think we've cleared things up, and we recommend that this policy be approved by council. But as always, we're open to discuss this if there are any questions and concerns.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cousineau. Do you have any comments to add, Mr. Kelly? I think we're still muted there.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
There we go.
Trying to deal with unmuting everybody else as well as myself. Sometimes you're stretching the technological ability here. The only comment I would say is I think as we went through the process, things did get a little clearer, in particular with groups that we engage with, that organize their own volunteers and bring their own volunteers to us, as opposed to the individual that we are directly engaging with. And this policy is geared towards the individual. It's not geared towards the association or the society, such as the Horticulture Society of either Almont or Packingham, that bring their own volunteers to us, bring their own organization to us, and bring their own insurance policies along with them, so that when they approach us, they're approaching us as a group, not as an individual, and they have all those prerequisites in place. We're really looking to cover the situation where we have a one-off individual coming to us. And just one other thing, the policies and the forms as you see them are the all-encompassing forms. So there are times where a vulnerability check or a police check is not going to be necessary, and that won't be part of the process. It really depends on, in some cases, the nature of what people will be doing. I mean, if they're going to be collecting garbage along the side of the road or collecting things in a park and they're all by themselves, some of these things are not going to be as prevalent or as necessary, and the training that they would go through that we would offer will be slightly different as well. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor Lowry.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to council for comments and questions, beginning with Councillor Gerard.
Okay, my biggest concern was that, and based on the correspondence that we did receive, that it did seem a little bit overbearing. I would like there to be something as simple as a single page, similar to what the City of Ottawa has done. I feel that cutting it back a little bit is correct, but I still feel that possibly it would scare people away. So I guess my biggest concern would be that it can be simplified down to a single page, that a single person who's volunteering for a specific park. I guess I find that it's just a little bit too much. I guess that's my own thought, but I just found that the paperwork was a little bit overbearing for what we were asking for.
Okay. Any response from staff?
Again, I mean, we have gone through a rigorous process to going through this, and again, the intent is to protect the municipality and the volunteers, just making sure that the paperwork is in place so that they are logged within our systems and covered under our policies, and that we can give them the adequate training that they may need in a specific volunteer policy, volunteer placement. And I guess another thing just to note is that the end goal is to have everything online. That would also make this policy probably quicker to fill out. It's not necessarily having to fill out all the paperwork and drive it into the municipal office or town hall. So maybe keep that in mind as well. That's what I have to offer.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cousineau.
Just if I can chime in on that, Mayor Lowry, just
Sure.
through Mayor Lowry to Councillor Gerard. I think really if you're involved in other organizations or organized sport, if you're signing a child up for hockey or gymnastics or any of those things, there are waivers that are in place, and this is par for the course for most organizations and most organized activities this day and age. The idea that you can kind of free flow doesn't happen very often anymore because of the nature of the litigious environment that we're in and the things that happen. And I think what we're trying to do is we're at least trying to cover off as much as we can, so that if there is a situation where something arises, we have the ability to say, no, we did ask the questions. We did ask if the person had a medical history. They offered up nothing. Or we asked if there was any concerns with regards to a vulnerable sector check, and we did those components, and we've actually taken the right steps. So that's what this is about. It's not about trying to create an onerous process. It's about trying to create the right atmosphere. And I don't believe this is something that's going to have to be done by each volunteer time and time again every year. It is predominantly a one-off situation, and we people know the opportunities that are there for the most part, and I think that this is not too much to ask on a one-time basis to get this in order. Thank you, Mayor Lowry.
Okay, thank you. Next is Councillor Holmes for comments or questions.
I just want to thank the staff for taking the policies back and really doing some good work on them. I think they're fine.
Okay. Councillor Maiden.
Yes, I think it's very good. It's not unusual. I'm pleased that they got it down to one page for the application and essentially one page for the contract. If you volunteer for the Cancer Society doing fundraising or driving, or you volunteer at schools or children's sports, this is not unusual at all. The only thing joining a committee, for example, we had to get a police check. Ironically, we did not have to get one to run for council. So that seemed odd to me. But I think it's very, very good. It was started, I think, under Mr. Kennedy, and Dan has done a wonderful job in polishing it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manelli. Any comments or questions? I think we may have the last Deputy Mayor Manelli, so I'll come back. Councillor Dalgety.
I've created many forms like this online and on PDF in the past, and as our CAO mentioned, this is pretty much standard nowadays with the amount of details and amount of content, and I always found it surprising when you took an online form and stuck it on a Word document, just how much bigger it looks. On the other side of the coin, online, there's ways you can format it, so you got the same amount of information, but it doesn't look as big as if you have a print version. So job well done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, but I apologize. It's difficult over a long weekend to contact people, of course, so I did have a couple of questions. And the first one, again, on page 21, at the very top, and realizing it follows on from page 20, where it does identify in bold the individuals that are covered by general liability insurance. But I understand, or following on to that rather, I understand the municipality will not assume any responsibility for any personal injury. And I guess that confuses me, and sometimes it doesn't take too much, but that's one of the things that kind of confuses me, that particular statement.
So that statement is intended to say essentially you're covered under the municipal liability insurance claim, but you will not sue the municipality for any injuries or anything that may take place. So it's from a legal ramifications perspective.
Sure, appreciate that, Dan. My second question is found on page 30, and it states volunteers shall not be permitted to operate municipal vehicles, and I assume that vehicles also implies equipment.
Correct.
Good, thank you.
And we could easily change that to make it more clear. That's
well, I just wonder sometimes if they may have to operate equipment, but yeah, if that's inclusive, that's fine.
I don't think it would hurt to add a couple words there just to make sure that it's vehicles and equipment with it, unless authorized by the CAO.
Yes, no, I agree with totally with, yep, thank you very much. And then if I'm permitted, one last one, and that's where there is no financial impact, but can we assume that we will have to supply and purchase tools, first aid kits, which I see are necessary, and also gloves and vests? So I imagine that is maybe already contained with our inventory. I don't know.
So we already do have some of that equipment in stock. Yes, obviously, as we go through first aid kits, they'll need to be replenished or replaced.
A participant has joined the meeting.
Similar with vests, I believe we do have a stock of vests that we can use for visibility. At this point, I don't believe there's any cost to be incurred. Understanding that there might be a few dollars here and there along the way that would be minimal if any of our equipment were to get damaged, like a vest. Or
Fine,
gloves.
thanks very much for your comments, and I appreciate the good work.
Thank you.
I'm just going to see if we have Deputy Mayor Manelli back on the line, and if he has any comments or questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
No. And where are you now?
So we're just discussing the volunteer policy, and if you have any comments or questions on that, for Mr. Cousineau.
I thought it was extravagant, to say the least, about the policy, and a word about who's going to keep it updated, and I had lots of concerns about it, but that's all I can say. There was more than one concern. What else? There was, let me grab my notes right here. I had a couple of things marked down on the pages.
Okay.
Some of the language that was used in it, I didn't like. Maintain accurate records of volunteer information, including the number of hours completed, and render it if applicable. Who's going to do that? That kind of stuff. The volunteer hand, who wrote it?
The volunteer.
And here's another one that says, be prompt and reliable in reporting for duty, notifying the immediate supervisor as early as possible if unable to report as scheduled. I didn't think we were going to the Army. Anyways, that's my comments.
Mr. Cousineau, did you want to provide any response?
Yeah, I guess for the volunteers, being prompt and reliable in reporting for duty. You know, if we do have an event on the go and we have planned for volunteers to be manning a specific station, and all of a sudden they can't make it, it's a courteous thing to just speak to the supervisor and let them know that you won't be able to attend. The other items, sorry, I was unable to follow on which pages we were. There was something about maintaining hours, which will not always be required, but for some of our volunteers that might be high school students that need hours to graduate. You know, they need the 40 hours of volunteer service. That way we know we can sign off on paperwork and just keep checks on our volunteers. And sorry, what was the other question, Deputy Mayor?
We still have you on the line, Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yeah. Are you just discussing the policy or the application too?
We can do both. Just let me know which form you're looking at, and I'll pull it up.
The potential on page 34.
Okay.
I understand the potential volunteer may be required to undergo screening process, which could include an interview and a reference check to help clean the park.
No, that's just stating that it may be a requirement. It's not necessarily a requirement. If you go to the volunteer contract, page 2, on page 36 of this document, there's a checklist there that the municipal staff is going to fill out and check off what training would be required for any potential volunteering placement. They definitely don't all apply to every posting, but it's meant to be all encompassing so we can tailor the list to a specific placement. So weeding a garden would definitely not need all of that training, but some instances where we might have the head of a volunteer group that could be exposed to the vulnerable public, we would definitely want them to have a police screening, or whether it's children or the elderly.
So on the volunteer contract, they also see harassment in the workplace policy, violent workplace, or is that going to be a taught course, or is there somebody there capable of it, or?
Yeah, if required, we have staff. These are all policies that we have signed off on when we join for the municipality. Again, a lot of it is quite straightforward. And if we were to have a large group of volunteers, again, for an event, for example, a festival, if we could request that we get everybody in the same room for an hour one evening or on the weekend or something along those lines, we can go through all the training that they need, with including site-specific training. So where first aid stations would be during a festival, so that we know where to go, in fire and evacuation plans, and any site-specific hazards that there might be. If there's concerts and there's electrical wiring running across a road, it's just being able to identify the risks.
Okay, that's the only comments I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have one question myself, if I can put that forward, and it's regarding page 34 on the volunteer application. And it is in the bottom portion, the acknowledgement of volunteer responsibilities. It's the third one in that section, where it acknowledges that the volunteer understands that upon acceptance of a volunteer position, they may be required to obtain a police vulnerable sector check or a police information check at their own expense. And I wonder, Mr. Cousineau, if you could provide any estimation on how many of the positions are likely to require these kinds of checks. I don't imagine it may be a large portion, but maybe your thought is different. And my second question is, because the volunteers are providing so much value to the municipality, I wonder if you think it would be a reasonable expense for us to take on to provide the cost of those checks, or if there's another workaround so that there is not an expense to volunteers to provide volunteering service to us and the community.
Yeah, so yes, I certainly expect it'll be the minority of the job postings that will, the volunteer postings that will require the screening. To use the Adopt a Park as an example, we might have a volunteer captain who has either children or some elderly or something on his team. For that type of position, yes, we would, because there's an additional risk, we would want that check to happen. But for the most part, I don't think most volunteer positions will be required to have this position or this screening. And again, as to payment for the vulnerable sector check, yes, I mean, we could probably find a way to cover the cost for the limited amount of volunteers that this would be required for.
Okay. I'm going to just go to the clerk for a comment on two procedural pieces here. We had a comment earlier from Councillor Ferguson wanting to add language into page 30 on the scope of the policy. So it would be that volunteers shall not be permitted to operate municipal vehicles, and the addition is and equipment unless authorized by the CAO. And I wonder if you can comment on that and whether we need an amendment or if we can just do that as a friendly amendment. And then my second question is the same for the situation with providing the covering the cost of the police checks or the vulnerable sector checks, recognizing that it would be a minority of volunteers that might need that. Do we need to do those two as amendments, Madam Clerk?
I believe the one with Councillor Ferguson's with adding that word in clarification with and equipment with approval from the CAO. I don't believe so because it's just a simple word section. With the covering the cost of police checks, since it involves money, we might, even though it will be a nominal amount, I think it would be safer to include an amendment and a vote by council, just so that everyone's in approval.
Okay. I'm just getting a note here indicating that sector checks have no cost. So I wonder if Mr. Kuzno, if you could clarify that, if there actually is a cost involved with that or not for sector checks.
The last I checked, there was a cost for it.
Okay.
I can follow up again and ask the question, but sorry, go ahead.
I just looked it up. It's $41 for a OPP record check, background check.
Okay. So given the advice from the clerk, I think that the comment from Councillor Ferguson regarding including equipment in the description of what volunteers are not permitted to operate unless authorized by the CAO, I think we can make that change as a friendly amendment. I've put forward the suggestion that we would take on the cost if there is any cost for those vulnerable sector checks or police checks. Since it would be a minority of the positions that require it, it's a fairly minimal cost, and certainly I think it would be a way to encourage the volunteerism that we see in our municipality. I wonder if there is someone who would be interested in providing that amendment then to the policy. If there's someone on council who feels the same on that.
Councillor Maiden, I would.
Okay, so a mover by Councillor Maiden. Is there a seconder for that amendment?
Yeah.
Councillor Holmes, I see you waving. So specifically on the amendment that would see the municipality covering those costs, if there indeed is a cost, is there any comments regarding that? And I'll start with Councillor Holmes.
I think it's a good idea and we should do it.
Okay. Councillor Maiden?
I agree with Councillor Holmes. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Manelli?
No comment.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety?
The only comment would be to provide this after they register. The police check's pretty common in a lot of other things. So register as a volunteer and then take the next step.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, definitely. Unless the policy is changed, there is no cost for vulnerable checks.
Okay. And Councillor Gerard?
Comment.
No comment. So voting then specifically on the amendment, all those in favor, Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard? I think I heard yes from Councillor Gerard.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
No.
Okay. So the amendment carries. I'm just going to leave a moment. We've had some discussion. I'm going to leave a pause here. If there's anyone with a further comment or a question, please feel free to make that comment or ask your question now. So hearing not, I'll call the vote on the, actually, do I have a mover and seconder, Madam Clerk?
No, you do not.
Okay. So can I do an amendment on something that wasn't on the floor?
I worded it as that you're amending the volunteer policy, not that you're amending the motion on the floor.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you for catching that. So I'm looking then for a mover and seconder for the amended policy.
Councillor Dalgety.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety.
Councillor Maiden, second.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden. Then all those in favor of the policy as has been amended, beginning with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes,
Yes.
Councillor Maiden,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Manelli.
No.
Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. Our second, let me see here. Our second report is the Adopt a Park policy, and we have Mr. Murphy, Recreation Manager, with us for this new policy. Mr. Murphy, are you on the line, and can you give us some opening comments on this report? Perhaps we don't have Mr. Murphy. Let me just see here.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I am here online, and I was part of that first discussion with respect to the volunteer policy. I think Mr. Cousineau summed up the process that we went through following the last council meeting very well, and obviously provided information in terms of the questions that went out and to which groups were sent out the questions. Just to touch upon it a little bit further, I did have an opportunity to speak with some of the individuals on some of these, these groups that are currently working in different areas. And after speaking with a lot of them, and getting a chance to just discuss what we're trying to do, I think the feeling was very positive. And again, I think it's just all in the way we communicate and get the message out. We are really trying to make this process as simple as possible. And some of the comments discussed with respect to the length of these policies, for example, the Adopt a Park policy, it's really the actual application is one page. It's not difficult to fill out, and we are obviously staff are here if there are any questions or if people need help in filling these forms out. Some of the discussion with respect to the last policy, with respect to some of the programs, for example, our rec hockey program that we've been running for years. Everybody that signs up has to fill out a form, has to register and fill out a waiver form. It's not something that that we're just seeing for the first time. And we're just trying to make this as simple as possible and ensure we get, with respect to the Adopt the Park anyhow, when we took this through the Parks and Rec Committee, the whole reason it came up is we're just looking for some help with respect to keeping an eye on the parks, cleaning them, maybe once or twice a year, or if the groups feel like cleaning a little bit more, they can. They are not going to be expected to be out riding lawnmowers or using machinery. Our staff will continue to do that on a full-time basis. It's just giving, I guess, maybe the best way to put it is giving the parks a little bit more love and attention. And I think with our growing community and the more parkland we are taking on, we're going to need this assistance. And that's really why this Adopt a Park policy surfaced, why it went through the Parks and Rec Committee, and why we're sitting here today having the discussion.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Kelly?
The only thing that I'd put out there is, these policies that we've been discussing have come out of the discussion around the health and safety and having a health and safety workplace. And I believe the discussion at the time when the health and safety policy was brought forward about a year or so ago was how do volunteers fit into this context? So what we've tried to do is provide a context around this, and the Adopt a Park policy follows from that. We're simply trying to ensure that the people that are doing the volunteer activities, we know them, we know the conditions around their role, and we're providing a context for them so that they know the parameters as much as we do. And I do believe that, again, the policies and the forms are no different than what we experience in many other organizations and many other sporting activities, as an example. And I don't think people are going to find them overly onerous, and we'll do our best to streamline them. But what you have here before you is a complete package to give you an idea of what the policy is and how it connects together. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Lowry.
Thank you. So I'll go to council for comments on this. Comments or questions, beginning with Councillor Maiden.
Thank you very much to Calvin. The Parks and Recreation Committee did a lot of work on this, and appreciate it, and looks good to me. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Manelli.
No comment.
Councillor Dalgety.
No, it looks good to me. No further comment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Comment.
And Councillor Holmes.
I think it's an excellent policy. Thank you to the staff who worked on it, Calvin.
Excellent, thank you. I have one comment, and it's just in reflection of a comment that came from council at our last meeting, and it was a question of including municipal areas that may not be parks. Now, it is an adopt a park policy, so maybe this wouldn't be appropriate, but I am wondering if there's any comment from staff, including other areas. And what I'm meaning by other areas, I'm thinking of spaces like Mark's Lookout along the Mississippi River there at the top of Martin Street, that wouldn't be captured under the policy because it's not a park, but it is a space that community members have in the past done some work on, and I wonder if there's a way to include areas like that in this policy as well, recognizing it is an adopt a park policy.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Lowry. Yes, I don't have any issue with respect to that. I think when the applications come in on a case-by-case basis, we can evaluate and look at the area that, you know, the potential group is looking at adopting. And if it's something that relates, for example, a Mark's Lookout, I mean, it's not technically a park, but it is an area that kind of falls somewhat within that, I guess, vicinity. And if it's going to be, you know, as long, again, this isn't something where people are coming in and doing major maintenance on there. They're going to be cleaning and just overseeing it, and I guess reporting anything major back to myself. I have no problem with that. They can actually, Councillor Gerard and I have a quick discussion on that, and there is an area where they can actually, that states area on the form, and they can indicate it in there, and I'll evaluate it. And if it's something that relates and is not something that's way outside of the scope, then we can certainly look at that. If it'll help the municipality, I think that's a great thing.
Excellent, thanks for that clarity. If there's no other comments, I'm looking for a mover and seconder for the adopt a park policy.
Councillor Dalgety.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. All those in favor of the adopt a park policy? Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yes.
Councillor Gerard.
Yes.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Holmes.
Yes.
Councillor Maiden.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Yes.
Thank you. We have adopt a park policy. Our next report is from the fire department. This is found on pages 52 to 60 regarding emergency response outside municipal boundaries. And to begin, I will go to Chief Brown for some comments on this report. Do we have Chief Brown on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
There, we can hear you. Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lowry and Council. What I've got is prepared a report that basically highlights the fact that currently we are responding outside municipal boundaries. As a neighbor helps neighbor in the fire service, Lanark Highlands is currently going through a review of their fire service and is awaiting a public consultation on guiding their decision at what they're going to do in the White Lake area. In the last 3 years, we've actually responded into their area once, which is pretty minor. And The purpose of the report is to basically inform council that Mississippi Mills is supporting their neighbor, and really to seek direction to how long you would like this to go on, knowing that our neighboring council is currently going through a consultation process with the public to determine how the future of their fire protection services will be delivered in their area.
Great, thank you very much, Chief. Any comments from the CAO?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Lowry. So with regard to this report, you'll notice that it covers off a little bit of history. And there was actually a fire protection agreement in place with Lanark Highlands back in 2012, and it stretched until, I believe, the summer, July 30th of 2016, in which case there was a payment for services. And as is pointed out in the report, and it's kind of key, there's a difference between mutual aid and automatic aid. And mutual aid is basically where we are being called. More than likely the scenario evolves where the fire department that we're assisting is already on site, or they feel that the fire is too big and they're calling people in. Automatic aid is a situation where we are dispatched generally at the same time as that fire department would be. So we're both going to the scene. In some cases, if we are closer to the residents, which are outside our municipality, this actually makes more sense, and that we'll get to them sooner, because really the idea is to get the aid or get the fire protection or fire suppression there as quick as you can. The difference here is if we are going when called and they're already on site, then we're simply going to help out, and their chief would actually be taking responsibility for our staff and whatnot. That's a true kind of mutual aid context or scenario. And Fire Chief Brown can chime in on this as well. In the automatic aid scenario, we are actually the service that's going, and we are basically providing a service outside our boundaries. And yes, it's only been once in 3 years, but that is a different context. That means that area is relying on us to be their service provider, and that's a completely different context. So as much as I understand that Lanark Highlands is having this discussion, I understand that this discussion has been going on for a long time, and I do want council to be aware that we are actually providing services outside our municipal boundaries. And if this is a bad fire season, we can expect to be going to this area more than once in 3 years. And I just want you to be aware of that, such that at a time in the future, if it ever comes to question, that council has been informed that our apparatus and that our volunteer firefighters are leaving the municipal boundary, and it can be on a more frequent basis than once a year. Thank you, Mayor Lowry.
Thank you. So we'll go to council for comments and questions, starting with Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lowry. I'm just wondering, when you have mutual aid, is it, recently we passed a bill in Mississippi Mills for cost recovery. Do we do cost recovery with other municipalities?
Through you, Mayor Lowry.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Lowry, the provincial mutual aid system does not operate with any cost recovery mechanism in place.
Thank you.
Councillor Dalgety.
Just a comment. I don't believe in leaving the folks in that area high and dry, so not providing the automatic aid. But on the same token, we need to have a conversation with Lanark Highlands in the future that we should be compensated if it's our responsibility to be out there. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. Chief Brown, your comment, or your question rather, on page 56 under paragraph 2, my answer to that is no. And the reason being, as good a neighbors as we want to be, and we are, we still should be compensated because it does cost us. I'm sure if our insurer is aware that we are providing that type of service or potentially that type of service, our insurance would go up. It also provides the requirement that do we have the staffing for it? And also, it does have the opportunity of saying that, yes, we've been very fortunate, but that may not always carry on. And I guess then my other question too, has Lanark Highland, well, we probably haven't made that discussion yet, or maybe haven't made that decision, but I do understand it was their thought process to close down the Sny Road Fire Department or Fire Hall. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Lowry. I am not aware of any decision. I believe there were a number of options for fire protection offered in the master fire plan that they have in draft. I don't believe any final decision has been made with regards to what their long-term plan is for the White Lake area.
Do we have some understanding of what population would be served by that particular Sny Road Fire Department, or Fire Hall rather? I know
through you, Mayor Lowry, I am not aware of what the population would be specific to the area in question.
Okay. Well, I certainly think we should be working on some type of compensation. That's the CYA, if nothing else.
Any further comments, Councillor Ferguson?
No, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you. I guess I understand that there's a cost and nobody has a crystal ball to know what's going to happen. My only comment would be that we have to realize that everything past Union Hall and even Clayton proper is actually Lanark Highland, and therefore proximity-wise, it's going to affect us. So I guess that's my only comment. I realize that we have to be compensated for, and possibly this should be something in place. Hopefully they will involve us with their conversation as to how they're going to go forward with this. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Ferguson, actually. I think we need to have a clear understanding. It sounds like we're doing automatic aid without compensation, and I think there's consequences for us for doing that. So I'm thinking that there needs to be some dialogue with this municipality to determine, what their expectation is going forward, because it is a little bit different from mutual aid. So I think we should not be doing it unless we have some kind of an agreement.
And Councillor Maiden.
I also support a service agreement, maybe that recognizes or provides for compensation over a certain threshold of service, but also recognizing that we have sort of mutual benefits of, being next to Lanark Highlands and that sort of thing. And I wouldn't really want to gouge them by any means, but perhaps two CAOs and involving our fire chief can come up with a recommendation after discussions. Thank you.
So going back to the chief's recommendation, is that he's looking for council to specify how long our department would support the Lanark Highlands Fire Service without seeking compensation. So perhaps, given the comments that we've heard from the discussion, perhaps I can suggest that we have a fixed date so that we are being neighborly, we are being understanding to the Highlands and their need for some time to put their fire master plan in place. but with a short window so that those conversations can occur. I'm suggesting, and I'm looking for comment both from the chief and from council, if we took the recommendation from Chief Brown, or the wording from his report, pardon me, and put in a date of, say, September 1st, if council was to specify that the Mississippi Mills Fire Department would support Lanark Highlands Fire Service without seeking compensation until September 1st, to allow for the conversations to occur, to allow for the Highlands to do the work and public consultation that they're requiring to do on the fire master plan. But then that does give a hard date of when we would be changing the relationship of the agreement we have. So I'm just suggesting that for your consideration, and perhaps I'll first go to Chief Brown to see if that would be a reasonable solution in your estimation.
Mayor Lowry, I think that would be a very goodwill gesture and should allow sufficient time for Lanark Highlands to sort out what they wish to do with their future fire protection in the area.
Okay. And I'll go through the list again and just be sure that this is capturing what everyone is feeling is appropriate at this time. So again, I'll start, actually I started with Deputy Mayor Manelli. I'll start with Councillor Dalgety this time.
I'm good with your suggestion, Mayor Lowry.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson, any comments or questions on a September 1st deadline?
I agree with that. It's just what happens now if there is an insurance issue. Is there, and I don't know, is there an insurance issue? And bear in mind that station number 5, certainly Mississippi Mills will be there well in advance of Lanark Highlands coming to station 5. So I just wonder, in the interim, is there a way, or should we be capturing something as not simple, but something that could be costly, like insurance, in an interim?
Okay. Chief Brown, do you have any response?
The FPPA permits municipalities to enter into an agreement, and it also has provisions for the mutual aid. Even under an agreement, the agreement would only be good for the first hour, with the automatic assumption that you move from automatic aid to mutual aid after an hour, because the incident should be sufficient enough that it would be covered under the provincial mutual aid system. So most agreements are only good for a 1 hour increment anyway.
Okay, thank you. That explains it.
Okay. Councillor Gerard?
I'm fine with what's being suggested. I think that, yes, I'm fine with what's being suggested. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Holmes?
I'm in agreement also with you, with the suggestion.
Okay. Councillor Maiden?
I'm in agreement also. Thank you.
Okay. And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes, but I know when Lanark Highlands does their review that it's not going to be solved by them building a station there for sure. So we're going to have a good, when we go into our agreement, a really good one drawn up, because they'll probably be relying on us. I don't know for sure, but thank you.
Okay. So hearing that, I'm going to look for a mover and seconder then for the motion that council indicate that the Mississippi Mills Fire Department will support Lanark Highlands Fire Service without seeking compensation until September 1st. Is there a mover and seconder for that motion?
Councillor Dalgety.
So Councillor Holmes and Councillor Dalgety, thank you. And I'll go through our list for voting on this motion, beginning with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So moving to our next report. The first from Roads and Public Works is the Ottawa Street intersection study. This is the amendments to Table 7. And I will go to Mr. Armstrong, our Acting Director of Roads and Public Works, for some comments on this recommendation.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lowry, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council. So as Mayor Lowry was depicting, it's amendments to Table 7. Now, this was brought forward a few months ago through Committee of the Whole, and there was just a couple of housekeeping issues to affect changes to. A couple were just line painting deficiencies, kind of similar to our Table 6 modifications, and we were looking at introducing a leading pedestrian interval at one of the pedestrian signals crossing Ottawa Street on the west side between Menzie and Paterson. There was some consultation with council prior to this report, and I believe a bit beforehand, before I put my hands on it. So I think that's pretty well. It's fairly straightforward. So I'll put it back to Mayor and Deputy Mayor and members of council.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Anything you wish to add, Mr. Kelly?
Not really. I think this really follows along from this discussion we've been having about how to attend to the intersections along Ottawa Street. And, this leading pedestrian interval is going to give people that little bit of extra time to make it across the road. It's going to give them between 3 to 6 seconds, and hopefully that's enough. And once we align the stop bars and things like that, I think it should be where council has wanted to see this go for a number of months. Thank you.
Thank you. And going to council for comments or questions, beginning with Councillor Ferguson.
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
No comment.
Councillor Holmes.
Comment, thank you.
Councillor Maiden.
Perfect, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manelli.
No comment, thank you.
Councillor Dalgety.
I'm good with this. No comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that council receive the proposed amendments for consideration to implement at the Ottawa Street intersection of Ottawa Street and Paterson Street as prepared by the Acting Director of Roads and Public Works dated May 19th, 2020, and that council directs staff to adjust the leading pedestrian interval setting to allow for a 3 to 6 second advance for pedestrians to cross Ottawa Street from Menzie Street to Paterson Street, and that council directs staff to align stop bars at Ottawa Street intersection of Paterson Street and Menzie Street to enhance vehicle visibility for pedestrians. Is there a mover and seconder for this recommendation?
Councillor Dalgety.
Councillor Maiden, second.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety. Thank you, Councillor Maiden. All that in favor, beginning with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson? Councillor Ferguson? Councillor Ferguson, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
There we are. And yes or no in favor of the
Yes.
recommendation? Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. That recommendation passes. The second report from Public Works is found on pages 63 to 66, and this is regarding the Paterson Street parking restrictions. So again, I'll go to Mr. Armstrong.
A participant has left the meeting.
So I'll first go to Mr. Armstrong, Acting Director of Roads and Public Works, for opening comments.
Thank you again, Mayor Lowry. So this original report went through council, I believe back in, Committee of the Whole, sorry, I believe back in February. Essentially, they were looking at kind of aligning no parking along Paterson Street. When I first came to Municipality back last fall, we did deem that this area a community safety zone and erected appropriate signage with it as well. So essentially, council directed staff to reach out for public comment. We did post a period of time for comment from the public from March 4th to March 22nd, I believe. We did receive 4 comments that were attached to the report as well. And
A
essentially
participant has joined the meeting.
consulting with council and staff, we were looking at having no parking areas erected from the entire west side of Paterson Street from Tatra to Robert Hill, and then no parking 9 meters both directions at both entrances of Orchard View. As you can see from earlier communication, that I forgot about the first entrance into Orchard View, so I only have the one. Just quickly brought back, and I was able to pencil this nice map that you're seeing on your screen right now, just showing the no parking area. So essentially it's 9 meters from either entrance, both ways, restricting no parking on that one side of Paterson Street. And I believe that's pretty much it. We did change the bylaw twice this morning to reflect these changes. Hopefully it's clear enough for council to see, but I'm here for any questions or comments.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Any comments from the CAO?
No, I think that this is basically what was wanted. I think when you recall the conversations that took place in the past, we did have it on both sides of the road, and we did go out, we were about to go out for consultation on that, and we had a clarification from Orchard View that they were just interested in the side that they were on and immediately adjacent to their entrances. So things were clarified on that point. And I think this is basically a good medium between what the Orchard View would like to see, so their entrance is a little more clear, yet not removing all the parking in the area. So thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go to council for comments, beginning with Councillor Gerard.
No comment.
Okay. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. I think it's excellent. I appreciate what the work the staff have done on it.
Councillor Maiden.
Just to be clear, because it's kind of gone back and forth in my mind, we will still have parking on the east side of Paterson Street, on the side that the school is on and the side that Orchard View is on, except for just their entrances. And we will eliminate parking on the west side, which is the opposite side, so that traffic can get through. Is that correct? Through the chair?
Through you, Mayor Lowry. Yes, that's correct. So the west side of the street, the opposite side of Orchard View, will have no parking from Tatra Street to Robert Hill. Essentially that whole block from the water tower down to Robert Hill Street going into Riverfront. And then on Orchard View's side of Paterson, it will just be the no parking areas for those, essentially roughly about 25 meters at either entrance to Orchard View.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Manelli.
No comment on that. I think it's just fine.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety.
It's fine with me. No comment. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Ferguson.
No comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the recommendation is that council receive the Paterson Street parking restrictions public comments report as prepared by the Acting Director of Roads and Public Works dated May 19, 2020, and that council pass the necessary bylaw to amend the traffic and parking bylaw to include no parking on Paterson Street. I'm not reading the right recommendation, I realized. Hold on. Actually, Madam Clerk, do you have it in front of you? I realize I'm looking at the old recommendation.
Yes, I do. So it'd be that the necessary bylaw to amend the traffic and parking bylaw to include no parking on the east side of Paterson Street from on the west side of Paterson Street from Tatra to Robert Hill Street, and to include no parking 9 meters south of both entrances on to 219 Paterson Street, and 9 meters north of both entrances at 219 Paterson Street on the east side. Sorry, that's very confusing.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that you had the right recommendation in front of you there. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this recommendation.
Councillor Maiden, move.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Dalgety.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety. All done in favor of the recommendation, starting with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Gerard? Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. So that has passed as well. So this brings us to the one
Has
report.
left the meeting.
This brings us to our one report from our treasurer, Rhonda Whitmarsh. This is the interim report number 4 on the financial implications of COVID-19. And do we have you on the line, Ms. Whitmarsh?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon. Could you go over the interim report for us, please?
Sure. So this is just a further update from the previous reports that I've provided to council over the last few meetings. I'll flip to page 68 and talk about the daycare first. So the date of this report is to May the 11th. So the daycare, table 1, page 72, has a deficit to May the 11th of $54,436. The province had some announcements today. The only one surrounding the daycare was that it would fall into phase 2 of the reopening plan, so don't have any idea at this point when that will be. Recreation, it's table 2, page 73. Again, a deficit to May 11th of $21,215. But as I mentioned, that's not uncommon for this time of year because we don't have ice in at the moment. So it's often, the recreation department is often in deficit at this time. The Almont Old Town Hall, we're starting now when we compare to 2019 figures, we're starting to see a decline in revenues there. They had been pretty consistent, but now we're at $16,517, where in 2019 we were at $24,000 for the same period of time. The library, table 3, page 74, again in a deficit of $43.63. As mentioned in previous meetings, though, this isn't uncommon as they're waiting for their household grants. On page 69 of my report, the building department still in a surplus position to May 11th of $42,640, and they are still working and issuing permits. Water and sewer, again, table 4, page 75, has a significant surplus of $503,171, and that's only because capital has not started or been funded at this point in time. The only other thing I wanted to point out, cash flows are still fine. We have total cash and investments of $15.9 million. We are between billing cycles, and we've already made the decision to waive penalties and interest on the final tax billing.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Was there anything else that you wish to highlight, Madam Treasurer?
No, I think that's really the differences from the last report.
Perfect. Thank you. Any comments from the CAO?
No comments, Mayor Lowry. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go to council for any comments or questions, beginning with Councillor Holmes.
Thank you so much for that update, and no, I have no comments at this time.
Okay. Councillor Maiden?
No comments, and thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
No comment right now. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Councillor Dalgety?
Thank you for the update. No comments right now.
Councillor Ferguson?
No comments. Thank you.
And Councillor Gerard?
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So I'm looking for a mover and seconder for the recommendation that council accept the treasurer's interim report on the financial implications of COVID-19 dated May 19th, 2020 as information.
Ferguson move.
And a seconder? Councillor Holmes? Thank you, Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Holmes. All done in favor of receiving this for information, beginning with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson,
Yes?
Councillor Gerard,
Yes.
Councillor Holmes,
Yes.
Councillor Maiden,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Yes.
Thank you. So this brings us to our last report on the agenda. It's the award of a request for proposal for the service delivery review. This is found on pages 77 to 78. And I'll go to our CEO, Ken Kelly, for some opening comments on this recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor Larry. To this point, this is a service delivery review, which is a process that the province has kicked off back in 2019. And there's been a large number of these reviews done of many municipalities across the province. And there was a process at one point in time in early December of 2019 asking for municipalities to submit applications for funding. At that time, Council passed a resolution to proceed with the service delivery review to the point of making that application and putting out an RFP. So we did put out an RFP and we've got responses back. We were not successful in attaining provincial funding under that intake process that they had for December, but we did receive municipal modernization funding to the tune of $625,944 in 2019. And we've just set that money aside, looking for opportunities where we could invest in making things better, improving service, and delivering a better overall experience and quality of service to the residents of Mississippi Mills. This is the start of a process to understand where we should make those investments. And the province has committed to a 4-year program for this. They've committed about $125 million. So what we saw in 2019 is not anticipated to be the end of this program. We're expecting that they're going to be issuing a call for more applications later this fall or potentially into 2021, depending on how COVID moves along in this year. And they're going to be looking for municipalities that have done the analysis to say, this is a good place for us to invest our funds in order to be successful in an application process. So this service delivery review is going to set us up for making further applications to the province, further requests for funding to take this to the next stage.
We're spending $128.
With that in mind, we're also going to have a good understanding of what we're good at. So there are going to be some services that we are good at that we're probably not going to be needing to do any further work on. There's going to be some that we're going to need to make investments around other things, such as maybe technology. And then there's others that we're going to need to take a really hard look at. And this service delivery review process is going to do that. So we had 3 responses. We went through a process of evaluating them technically. And if a respondent did not meet the minimum criteria, which was get a 70% on the technical qualifications, we didn't even open their financial component. So one of the 3 that submitted didn't pass that grade, and we didn't open it. The other 2 we did, and with the combined point ranking, Strategic Corporation is the preferred respondent for us to go with. And just in terms of Strategic Corp, in looking at their history, they've done a lot of these reviews. They have a lot of them currently going on, but they've also have a long history in this. And I have spoken to at least one municipality that had them recently, and the comments that they had to make about Strategy Corp and their team and how successful of an engagement was. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor Lowry, and I think that that should put us in good stead to have a good discussion on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. So we'll go to Council for any comments and questions on this RFP, beginning with Councillor Maiden.
Thanks, through the chair. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for the background. You answered a lot of my questions, but I'm just wondering the timing and the methodology that's going to be used. I'm a bit curious about that. If you could just briefly tell us a bit.
Well, the timing that they have, so each proposal was required to provide us with a Gantt chart, and they were anticipating us awarding this in April. We did extend the period for submission slightly, and with our changes in how council were happening, we haven't quite gotten to the stage of awarding this at this point in time. So we're slightly behind, but they anticipated having this done by about the end of August. And the reason that that date is key is because the province, with regards to its next stage of intakes, is looking to have reports in hand by about mid-September. So the end of August is a key date for us. And even though we're slightly behind, it's not going to be a problem to continue on with this work in terms of timing. That was your first question. Your second question was their methodology. And the Strategy Corp has provided us, as part of their proposal, a work plan, a timing, but also their methodology and approach. And their approach is based on, it's kind of a version or an adaptation of Six Sigma, sort of lean process re-engineering. And this is similar to the process that most consulting firms go through that have an understanding and a background in what a re-engineering process or a continuous process improvement project should be. And they call it scope, is what they call it. Like I said, it is based on a well-known methodology called Six Sigma or lean process.
Any further questions, Councillor Maiden?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Thank you. I have a couple, and it's about timing, but it's also about COVID-19. If will the province come out if we do a modernization, use a modernization fund to do this work, and they come out and change some of the way we deliver service? Is that going to affect this $125,000 study?
Can you clarify if the province changes the way we do service?
Well, nobody's doing business the way it's known now. Everybody's changing the way they do business. I'm talking about internally, externally.
I think, with regards to I guess what you're trying to say is this project going to study something that we're no longer going to need to have studied by August?
That's very close to my question. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think for the most part, what we're going to focus on in this is, how we actually do business. And there's lots of components of our business that we need to look at that I don't think COVID is going to change that dramatically. So for instance, you get into situations such as, who's the best provider of service? Is it the best for us to internally be the delivery agent of this service? Is it something that we should look to partner with the county on? Or is it something that the private sector could provide, either a lower cost, better service, more timely, more technology, or what have you? So I think there's some answers depending on the nature of the service that we're going to get into, which is about who's the right delivery agent. And of course, this is mainly geared towards efficiencies, better quality of service, better responsiveness to residents. I don't think that the province is going to change enough parameters that the work that's going to be done is not going to be worthwhile, that it's going to sit on a shelf or be stale data. I think what we're going to get back is a good understanding of who's the best provider of service. Like I said, internally, say partnering with the county or another external provider, or for us to be contracting out to a private company. I think those are some of the questions that are going to come into play. We're also going to get feedback on things like, is the organization structured properly? Is there ways that we can restructure the organization by putting things together or changing things up such that that can lend itself to better processes or better service delivery? Then I think there's going to be another level, and we saw this when we did the recreation program, service delivery review about 1.5 years ago, and that was, there's things that are external to the department that if we changed or we fixed, the department itself could run better. These are things like technology. So for instance, we're moving to revamp our website. The next stage for us is probably going to be putting more things on the web, e-commerce, applications, registration and things like that, so that we can actually allow people to do more without having to engage with us, which there again, I think speaks to your COVID question, which is, yeah, we're going to change our business, we're going to modernize it, but in many cases, we're going to be, going with the times, which is also going to go with COVID. So I'm not sure COVID is going to be a bad thing, and I'm not sure the province is going to change the way we do business in so many different ways that we can't use this report. Like I said, the province has, I would think, the intake that they did in December saw applications from almost 150 municipalities, and they funded just over 100 of those applications. So if they change business for us, they're changing it for a lot of people, a lot of municipalities. I'll leave that.
Thank you.
Mayor Lowry for
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manili.
Does that provide clarity for you, Deputy Mayor Manili?
Yeah, somewhat. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Dalgety.
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. I have questions, obviously, and some comments. First of the comment, yes, I think service delivery is necessary. I question, when did the RFP go out? And if it went out prior to mid-March, would we now, if it was going out now, would we change anything in it? Specifically to wording, and I'm asking more specifically to address, and if it will address, and the CAO made a reference to the right deliverer, and I just wonder how much they will dwell down specifically to that. And he made reference to, yes, the organization. Again, I'm assuming that there would be comments from the provider specifically to the organization. And then I wonder as well, should there be any discussion within the report specifically to how the consultants see return to service delivery under the new norm? And I think we're all under the same impression that when all of this is over, hopefully sooner than later, that we will in fact be working under some type of different service delivery. And I just question how much they may dwell into that, and specifically to addressing the new deliverers, because again, I think that the governments are going to find themselves looking for ways and means of capturing all the dollars they can. So I think the ways and means of providing a new deliverer, or maybe a cheaper way, is certainly going to be front and foremost. Thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Ferguson, through the chair, I did try and make some notes as I was as you were speaking, but if I do miss anything, please jump in. With regards to what the consultant is delivering, as I said, they did provide a detailed work plan in their proposal. And in terms of what the recommendations they're going to provide to us, I'll just read from their proposal. They're going to create a detailed recommendation specific to prioritize opportunities as outlined in phase 3, which phase 3 was where they did their analysis work. And those recommendations are going to speak to any changes to operational structures, service levels, service delivery models, including alternative models, resources and staffing levels required to support improvement opportunities, and key performance indicators to assess outcomes. They're going to develop an implementation plan for this, which includes change management strategies, including training opportunities, and recommendations to support organizational transformation. They're going to develop a communication plan for both the staff and the public, and they're going to prepare a service delivery report that'll be delivered to both myself and council, and ask for our feedback, and then they're going to provide a final report. So I think we're going to get a couple of times to have feedback into this process in terms of what they're delivering in terms of recommendations and their analysis. And I do think that the gist of what we're going to be doing here is looking for opportunities to modernize the way we do things. And I do agree that yes, the province is going to be looking for ways to provide service at the lowest cost. They're still going to want to see that quality of service, and that we're taking into account all of our stakeholders, and we're delivering to the expectations of our citizens. So all of these things are going to need to play into, at the end of the day, the decisions that council will have to make. The report will be delivered to us with recommendations. It will be up to council whether you feel justified in implementing any of those recommendations and directing staff to implement any of those recommendations. Some of the criteria I imagine we could put on the table for the consultants would be things like any known changes that the return to normal, I think is how you phrase it, would be, or how COVID would be implemented and things like that. All of those things are going to become standard practice in terms of considerations as we move forward from now on. Things like plexiglass barriers, masks, social distancing, until we actually get to a point where a vaccine is going to be in play. And even as we go through this process with the consultant, there will be more of an emphasis on web conferencing, so Skype, Zoom, WebEx, and things like that, teleconferencing, supplying them with information and things like that, doing online surveys of staff, etc., as opposed to the traditional face-to-face, say, town hall meetings and things like that. So even this project in and of itself is going to be somewhat modified in order to deal with our changing times. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you very much. It certainly sounds as a very ambitious project on their part, and I just hope they carry through, because as we're well aware, we have not had a stellar performance in reference to consulting reports and the recommendations coming forward on and/or the implementation of same. So I'm certainly looking forward to this report, because it certainly strikes a chord, and I think we should be on top of it all the time. Thank you very much for that.
Councillor Gerard.
I'm satisfied, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. My questions have been answered. I'm really pleased with what we're doing.
Okay. So the recommendation is that council award the request for proposal to conduct a comprehensive service delivery review to Strategy Corps Incorporated in the amount of $124,683.08 plus HST, to be funded from the municipal modernization funding received from the province in 2019. Looking for a mover and seconder for this recommendation.
Councillor Maiden to move.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes and Councillor Maiden. And I'm looking for all those in favor of this recommendation, starting with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
No.
Okay, so the recommendation carries. This brings us to our three bylaws. So bylaws 20-043 through to 20-045. The first is the no parking on Paterson Street, and the other two are part lot control bylaws. Looking for a mover and seconder for the three bylaws.
Ferguson.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. A seconder?
Councillor Maiden.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden. Would anyone like to have a separate discussion or vote on any of these three bylaws? We'll pause for a moment if anyone wishes to pull a bylaw. Hearing no comment, I will go to the top of our list for voting on approval of these three bylaws, starting with Councillor Dalgety. Yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. Our bylaws have passed, which brings us to the confirmatory bylaw. Looking for a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw, which confirms the proceedings of this afternoon.
Dalgety.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety and Councillor Holmes. All those that in favor of the confirmatory bylaw, beginning with Councillor Dalgety, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard? Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Yes.
Councillor Maiden?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli?
Yes.
Thank you. And adjournment, mover and seconder for adjournment.
Ferguson?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Holmes.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. We have a mover and seconder. All those in favor of adjournment. Councillor Dalgety.
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yes.
Councillor Gerard.
Yes.
Councillor Holmes.
Yes.
Councillor Maiden.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Thanks for a good meeting.